When my boss, Mr. Evans, called me into his office, I thought it would be a routine discussion of work tasks, but his request was completely unexpected. "Daniel," he began, taking off his glasses and looking at me carefully, "I need a little help. I'm going away for a week, and I'd like you to look after my house." I froze, not immediately understanding whether he was joking or being serious. "Excuse me, behind the house?" I asked again. "Exactly. You are the most responsible of my employees. Just ensure everything is in order, and most importantly, no one creates chaos." His voice sounded calm, but, at the same time, stern. I didn't know how to answer. On the one hand, it seemed like a strange assignment. Conversely, it was a chance to show myself in a good light. "Okay," I finally said. "When should I go there?" "Tomorrow morning. Everything is ready," he answered, smiling. The next day, I arrived at his house. It was incredible. A spacious mansion with high ceilings, huge windows, and a swimming pool in the backyard. Everything looked too perfect until I heard the splash of water. "Is anyone there?" I asked loudly, hoping it was just the wind or the automatic sprinkler. But when I went into the backyard, I saw him. A young guy was splashing around in the pool, and he was completely naked. "Hey, who are you?" I shouted, covering my eyes with my hand. "I'm calling the police." The guy shook the water off his face and laughed. "Easy, hero," he said, pulling himself up. "I'm Alex." "Alex?" I took my hand away and looked at him. He looked confident and was in no hurry to cover himself. "Mr. Evans' son." I took out my phone and dialed the boss's number. "Mr. Evans, some guy here says he's your son." "Oh yes, this is Alex. I forgot to mention that he would be there. I need you to watch him," he replied calmly. "Were you keeping an eye on it?" "Yes. He can be impulsive. Make sure he doesn't throw parties or do anything crazy. I trust you, Daniel." I put the phone down, stunned that I was now responsible not only for the house, but also for this cocky guy. "So, are you my new nanny?" Alex grinned, finally throwing on a towel. "Just don't make a mess here and everything will be fine," I replied, trying to maintain a serious tone. He just shrugged his shoulders and went into the house, passing by me, flashing his naked torso and butt. The first day passed relatively quietly, except for the blaring music from Alex's room. I knocked on the door several times to ask for it to be turned down, but the only response was loud laughter and a promise. "Right now, right now." By the evening I realized I would have to be more persistent. "Alex," I said, opening the door to his room, "can you at least turn the volume down a little?" He lay on the bed, stretched out with headphones and rhythmically tapping his fingers on the phone. "Oh, sorry, Nyan Daniel, I didn't notice." He chuckled, standing up. "I'm serious. You're not the only one living here," I replied, trying to stay calm. The actual tests began on the second day. In the morning, I discovered a suspicious smell and several strange bottles in the kitchen. "What the hell is this?" I asked, finding Alex lying on the couch with his phone. "I just wanted to make some cocktails. Nothing special," he replied with a smile, but his eyes showed obvious coquetry. "Nothing like that should be here without Mr. Evans's approval," I said, putting the bottles away. "You're so boring," he said, but didn't argue. Every day brought new tension. Alex was chaos personified. He tried to arrange a late-night pool with loud music, convinced me he needed to get a few friends, and even offered to take me for a ride in his dad's car. "You want us both fired?" I said, hearing his latest idea. "Relax, Daniel," he replied with a carefree smile. "You're making things more complicated." By the end of the week, I was exhausted, but some moments made me look at Alex differently. One time I caught him with his books, and he sheepishly put them aside and said, "I'm just preparing for the exams. I still need to show that I'm worth something." It was unexpectedly sincere, and I noticed that there was something deeper behind his audacity. On my last evening, Alex approached me in the kitchen. "Thank you for not abandoning me this week," he said, smiling. "I was just doing my job," I replied, though the words left a strange warmth inside. When he went to his room, I allowed myself to relax for the first time in a week. It was all over, or so it seemed to me then. Mr. Evans' week was over, and I resumed my regular routine. Everything was simple and predictable again. Reports, meetings, and daily coffee in the office cafeteria. I tried not to think about Alex. That whirlwind of events was in the past, and I was glad to be living on a schedule again. However, the calm didn't last long. A few days later, I saw him in the office. Alex was standing at the reception, with his usual smile and a smartphone in his hands. "Daniel," he called, noticing me. "Alex, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to hide my surprise. "I miss my nanny," he answered mockingly, but sincerity sparkled in his eyes. I rolled my eyes, but my insides twisted. His confidence had always been unsettling. Here, in my work world, it seemed even more out of place. "Aren't you supposed to be in class?" I asked, coming closer. "I'm on break, and I decided to drop in. I hope it's not prohibited?" "Alex, this is a workplace," I said, lowering my voice to avoid unnecessary glances from my colleagues. "Oh, come on," he said, grinning. "I just wanted to ask you out after work." "No," I answered too sharply, which surprised me. He was silent for a moment, but then he smiled. "Okay, bye, but you'll regret saying no." With these words, he left, leaving me with mixed feelings. The next day, he showed up again, this time with coffee, which he placed right on my desk. "Good morning, Nanny." I sighed heavily, realizing that he wouldn't leave so quickly. "Alex, I really need to work." "Okay, let's agree this way. I'll disappear if you spend the evening with me." "I can't." "Are you afraid?" His words stung me. I wanted to respond, but instead I just shook my head. At that moment, he proposed a deal. "Look, let's do it this way. If I get perfect grades on the upcoming exams, you agree to spend one evening with me." I chuckled. "I doubt that will happen." "Then what are you afraid of?" he asked, a challenge in his voice. The deal seemed so unlikely that I agreed without even thinking. "It's good if it helps you focus on your studies." He smiled. "Great. See you later, Daniel." I watched him go, feeling a strange premonition growing inside me. This story was clearly not going to end as quickly as I wanted. It had been a while since Alex had declared his intention to get perfect grades. To be honest, I didn't take his words seriously. He seemed too frivolous to handle something like that. I continued working, trying not to think about the strange deal until I saw him again in my office one day. "Hey, Daniel," Alex said, bursting into the room with a wide smile. "Alex, I told you." "Wait, don't start. I have something important for you," he interrupted and put a paper on my desk. I looked at it and froze. It was a printout of his grades, perfect scores in all subjects. "Are you serious?" I asked, still not believing my eyes. "Of course," he said with a smile, crossing his arms. "I promised. Now it's your turn." "My turn?" "You promised that if I succeeded, you would spend the evening with me." I took a deep breath. I had fallen into the trap of my own words. "Okay, and where do you want to go?" "To the concert," he replied, his eyes lighting up enthusiastically. "A concert? Alex, I don't think that's a good idea." "Oh, come on! You said to yourself that you would keep your promise." I had no choice but to agree. On the evening of the appointed day, I was waiting for him at the entrance to the concert hall. Alex appeared in a black shirt and jeans, always looking confident. "You look a little tense," he said, noticing my expression. "I'm just not used to such events," I replied, looking around at the crowd. The concert started with loud music that immediately made my ears pop. People were screaming, jumping, and waving their arms to the rhythm of the songs. On the other hand, Alex seemed in his element, enjoying every moment. "Relax, Daniel," he shouted over the music. "It's not that easy," I replied, but he grabbed my hand and pulled me closer to the stage. I felt out of place, but watching Alex laugh and dance, I gradually succumbed to the atmosphere. His enthusiasm was infectious. As the concert was coming to an end, he turned to me. "Well, how is it?" he asked, smiling. "Not so bad," I admitted. We walked out of the room. The air was incredible, and there was silence between us for a moment. Alex suddenly leaned closer. "Thank you for coming. It means a lot to me." I wanted to answer, but I felt his lips on mine instead. The kiss was unexpected, but I couldn't pull away. That was the moment when I realized that something was wrong with me and my body. My heels felt glued to the floor, and everything below my stomach started to move. After the concert, I couldn't get what had happened out of my head. Alex kissed me, and I hadn't just let it happen. I had kissed him back. But what did that mean? Why did I feel a strange thrill when his lips touched mine? The next day, I tried to convince myself that it was just a mistake. Maybe we were both too emotional, but the memory of that moment wouldn't let go, coming back repeatedly like a stuck song. Alex acted as if nothing extraordinary had happened. He kept texting me, "You don't regret yesterday, do you? Tell me we'll do it again." I avoided direct answers, but I couldn't completely shut myself off. His persistence and sincerity left no chance to forget what had happened. A few days later, Alex invited me to dinner. I tried to decline, but he insisted. "Daniel, thank you for the other night. No pressure." I agreed, convincing myself that it was just a friendly meeting. We met in a cozy little restaurant, quiet and almost empty. Alex looked different, calm and focused, but still with the usual sparkle in his eyes. "Are you still worried about the concert?" he asked, bowing his head slightly. "A little," I admitted. "You know, you overthink." he said with a smile. Sometimes you just have to live in the moment. He said it so quickly that I couldn't help but wonder, what if he's right? Maybe I'm making things more complicated than they need to be. After dinner, he suggested going for a walk. The night was quiet. A calm wind blew across his face. As we walked through empty streets, our conversations became increasingly personal. Alex talked about how difficult it was for him to sometimes live up to his father's expectations. He thinks I'm just a frivolous boy, he said, looking at the stars. You can be different if you want, I replied. And you? What's wrong with you? Why are you always so severe? I thought about it. Alex was right. I had long been accustomed to hiding behind responsibility and rules, avoiding anything that could throw me off my usual rut. When we stopped at my house, he suddenly took my hand. I know you're scared, he said quietly, but I'm not rushing you. Just know that I like being around you. His words struck a chord deep inside me. Instead of answering, I gently squeezed his hand, letting him know that I appreciated this moment too. He took me by the hand and led me into the house. I did not resist. His father was probably still at work, considering that we had essential reports. We went to his room. I went in first, and then he went in. Coming close to me, he took me by the waist and kissed me again, after which he knelt down and tried to pull my pants off where the tense tool was very stubbornly interfering with him. He grinned, looking up, and when he finally managed to pull them off, he began to dry it, clasping it with both hands, after which we had sex. This night was a real discovery for me. We repeated it 3 or 4 times or more, and I lost count at some point. It's been 2 weeks since I allowed myself to be closer to Alex. Everything happened slowly but surprisingly naturally. We corresponded every day and discussed little things and plans. Alex seemed more collected, which surprised me. I influenced him as much as he influenced me. And then one evening he called. "Daniel, get ready," he said with excitement in his voice. "What, where?" "It's a surprise," he replied. Despite my doubts, I agreed. Half an hour later, he pulled into my house in his old SUV and motioned for me to get in. "Don't worry, you'll like it," he said, starting the car. We drove along the dark streets until he stopped at a small park. I was surprised, but he just smiled and pulled me along. A small group had gathered in the park to listen to a street musician. The atmosphere was almost magical. The soft light of the lanterns, the guitar, the happy faces. "Where have you brought me?" I asked, feeling a mixture of relief and surprise. "I just wanted to show you that life is not all about work," he replied. We enjoyed the music, talked, and laughed until the crowd began to disperse. Alex suggested going home, and I agreed. We got into the car and started kissing. We decided to go around the corner of the house first because we couldn't stand it anymore and had sex right in his father's car. It was incredible, but not everything was as beautiful as we would have liked. But on the way back, everything went wrong. We were pulled over by a police officer for speeding. Alex, as usual, started with a smile. "Good evening, officer." "Your documents, please," the policeman answered dryly. Alex handed over the documents, but his relaxed tone did not please the officer. "Do you understand that you were driving faster than the speed limit?" "Oh, just a couple of kilometers." Alex waved it off. I felt anxiety starting to build inside me. "Alex, stop," I whispered. "Everything is under control," he replied. But at that moment, the situation escalated. The policeman took his words as a challenge and demanded that Alex get out of the car. I tried to intervene, but it was no use. We were both taken to the station. Sitting in the small room with gray walls, I looked at Alex and felt anger wash over me. "Do you even understand what you've done?" I asked, not holding back my emotions. "Hey, it's just a misunderstanding," he replied, still trying to look confident. "Misunderstanding? We were just taken to the police station." Finally, thanks to Mr. Evans's intervention, we were released. But it did not bring joy. Once we were outside, I turned to Alex. "That was irresponsible," I began, not holding back my anger. "You think you can do everything? You need to grow up, Alex." "I was just trying to make our night more interesting," he replied, no longer smiling. "You know, I can't be with someone who doesn't think about the consequences." He wanted to say something, but I raised my hand, stopping him. "Alex, this is the end." I got into a taxi, leaving it standing on the empty street. After that night, I felt empty. On one hand, I was angry at Alex for his irresponsibility. On the other hand, I couldn't ignore how hard it was to make this decision, but I knew I had done the right thing. The next day, Mr. Evans called me into his office. His tone was serious, and I realized he knew what had happened. "Daniel," he began, folding his hands on the table, "I heard about yesterday's incident." I sighed, preparing myself for the worst. "I don't approve of my son dragging you into this," he continued. but I also think you should have seen the consequences coming. I'm sorry, sir, I replied. I did everything I could to control the situation. Obviously, that wasn't enough, he said, looking at me intently. I'm asking you to stay away from Alex. He's an adult and needs to figure out his own problems. The words hit me like a blow. I wanted to argue, but I knew he was right. Instead, I just nodded. Okay, sir. The next few weeks passed in a blur. I threw myself into my work, trying to forget about Alex. But it wasn't easy. His name kept coming up in conversations, his laughter echoing in my head, and memories of our time together kept me up at night. I returned home one evening and saw a familiar figure at my entrance. It was Alex. What are you doing here? I asked, trying to keep my tone cool. I came to apologize, he said, looking into my eyes. It won't change anything, I replied. I know, but I still had to say it. I felt something inside me tremble, but I didn't allow myself to show it. Thanks for your apology. Now you better leave. He nodded, lowering his head, and walked away, leaving me with a feeling of emptiness. In the following days, I tried to occupy my time with work again, avoiding any thoughts about him, but it was all in vain. Alex continued to occupy space in my mind. One day, I came across his social media profile. He posted a photo with the caption, "Sometimes you have to lose something important to start changing." These words touched me. I realized that despite everything, I still cared about him. But I decided to give it time to sort things out. Sometimes the best way to deal with feelings is to let them go for a while. 3 months had passed since the evening I had last seen Alex. Life seemed to have returned to normal. Work took up all my time again, and I devoted my free evenings to books and solitary walks. Everything seemed calm on the outside, but I still felt a strange sense of emptiness inside. I tried to convince myself that it was right. Alex was too impulsive and too reckless for us to be together, but these excuses didn't help. I found myself thinking about him more and more often. One day, as I was leaving the office, I accidentally met his friend Tim, with whom he often communicated. "Hi, Daniel," Tim greeted, a little embarrassed. "Hi, Tim, how are you?" "Not bad. By the way, Alex asked about you. He has changed a lot in the last few months," he said with a slight smile. "Really?" I was surprised, although I tried not to show my emotions. "Yes, he took his studies seriously and graduated with honors. He even found an internship to prove to his father that he could be independent." Those words stuck in my head. The Alex I knew was full of energy, but lacked discipline, and yet now he seemed determined to make a difference. The next day, sitting over a cup of coffee, I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. I felt like I was starting to see Alex in a new light. Maybe I was wrong when I thought he wasn't serious. A couple of days later, I got a message. It was short. "I've changed. I'd like to talk. Alex." My heart sank. I stared at the screen for a long time, not daring to answer. But in the end, I wrote, "When and where." We met in a small cafe. Alex was already waiting for me at a corner table. He looked different from what I was used to seeing. He wore a shirt and neat hairdo, and his gaze was composed. "Thank you for coming," he said, greeting me. "You wanted to talk," I replied, sitting down opposite. He took a deep breath. "I know I was stupid. You were right. I needed to grow up, and I'm trying to do it." "I heard you graduated from university," I said, feeling a strange warmth growing. "Yes, it wasn't easy, but I did it. For myself and for you," he added quietly. Those words silenced me. I looked at Alex, trying to discern how sincere he was being. His eyes no longer shone with the reckless confidence I remembered. Instead, they showed determination and, surprisingly, maturity. "For me?" I asked again. "Yes," he said, holding my gaze. "I knew I lost you because of my stupidity. I wanted to prove that I could be a different person, that I could be someone you wanted to be with." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process his words. This was the same Alex, but also a different one. Someone who had finally realized that life wasn't all about fun. "It means a lot, Alex," I said finally. "But I can't just forget everything that happened." He nodded, accepting my words. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I just want you to give me a chance." We sat in silence, and I felt different feelings fighting inside me. Anger, doubt, hope, all mixed up. But simultaneously, I couldn't ignore that my feelings for him hadn't gone away. "Okay," I said after a long pause. "I'll give you a chance." His face lit up with that same smile I hadn't seen for a long time. "Thank you, Daniel. I won't let you down." When I got home, I thought about how things might have changed in the last few months. Maybe Alex had changed. I had changed too. Since that day we met in the cafe, Alex had slowly begun to creep back into my life. It wasn't a sudden or intrusive intrusion. He was giving me space and time to get used to the new version of him. One morning, when I came to work, I was surprised. On my desk was a box with a note. "Daniel, this is a small thing, but I think you deserve it. Alex." Inside were my favorite chocolate truffles. It was unexpectedly pleasant, and I couldn't help but smile. Soon, Alex appeared in the office more often, but no longer as a reckless young man. He came with business, sometimes with a report on his internship, sometimes with questions about work. He no longer waved his arms, did not make sarcastic remarks, and, surprisingly, did not try to attract unnecessary attention. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I noticed him at the exit. "Are you waiting for me?" I asked with a slight grin. "Perhaps," he replied. "Do you have time for coffee?" I hesitated, but his calm and sincere tone made me agree. We sat in a small cafe near work, and the conversation was surprisingly easy. He talked about his internship successes and his career plans. At some point, I thought I felt proud of him. "You've really changed," I said, looking at him thoughtfully. "I tried," he replied. "But it's not just me. You made me realize that I can do better." These words touched something inside me. I no longer saw the impulsive guy who couldn't control himself before me. Alex became serious and focused, but retained the spark that made him special. A couple of weeks later, he invited me to dinner to celebrate the end of his internship. "It's important to me," he said when I hesitated. "I want you to be here." I agreed, and sitting at the table with Alex and his new colleagues that evening, I felt a warm feeling wash over me. Alex was no longer the man I had once doubted. When the evening was over, he drove me home. I paused at the threshold before opening the door. "Alex," I began, turning to him, "you've proven a lot to me over the past few months." "It's not over yet," he said with a smile, and I realized he was right. When he leaned in to kiss me this time, I didn't pull away. This is how our relationship began. From a simple request from the boss, to just look after the guy and the house, to my current life. Thank you for listening to my story, and your words of support with a like and comment will really help me understand that it was not in vain.